I am so looking forward to having you meet my next guest. She is a Fergus Falls-based artist. Her art is in the area of water medium, and we'll find out more about that from her. She was almost not born. Her story, so compelling to me. I met her doing the Discover Minnesota with Roshini show on Facebook. I welcome you to check out episode number 22 and find out more about that backstory. But her mom became pregnant during China's one-child policy. And if you don't know what that means, there was a draconian time in China where they were only allowing one child, and a lot of families would abort or let a child who wasn't a son die. And her family already had a son, and there was an appointment already made for her mom. Her mom was so brave, left China 3 months pregnant to come to the United States to have Nancy. So that is the backstory for this amazing young woman who is based in Fergus Falls, full of joy, full of life. Her art reflects that. Nancy XiaoRong Valentine, welcome to Real Talk with Roshini.
Oh, good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
You know, you were just so full of light. I didn't want to spend too much time talking about that backstory, but it really is emotional. It's very poignant. But you have found a way to use the strong women in your life, the family who raised you, as themes for your art. Tell us about that.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Thank you for giving me the preface of the backstory, because part of my story that many people aren't aware of is that my father passed away in '96, and my mother, being a new mother of two, an immigrant woman and non-English speaker, ended up, moving some mountains and being able to bring my grandparents here. And so I was raised by my maternal grandfather and grandmother, my mother, but as also a couple of just deeply wonderful public health nurses named Nancy Lawson and Janet Bateman, who really took us under their wings, taught my mom English, raised my brother and I in the way of community first mentality, and always making sure that everything that we do has an element of servanthood in it as well.
It's so wonderful, and it's not only a great immigrant story, but it's a great American story. And you're such an example of an amazing American. You just happen to be Chinese American. All right, so you are a water medium artist. Explain to people what that means.
Yes, absolutely. So I define water mediums as anything that can be activated by water. So I use primarily watercolors and gouaches, but I also use a lot of Chinese ink. And when I use the term water medium, I really have just kind of coined that myself because I use site-specific water. I happen to live on a lake, and so I tend to source water from that lake and then use that to activate my paints, because I've noticed that the minerals and the deposits in that water tend to react differently with the paints, and I just really appreciate that organic quality.
Yeah, and beautiful pieces. You'll see a lot of them in the Discover Minnesota with Roshini episode that features Nancy along with some other Otter Tail County artists. We also put some of her art on Facebook and on Twitter, so check that out. When you're creating or coming up with the design, I mean, what inspires you to sort of go in the directions? They're very much featuring, some of them feature shapes, very, bodily shapes, human shapes, animal shapes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm inspired by a lot of what is around me. Many artists will say, the natural or nature animals, but I'm really interested in symbolism. I was raised by a lot of really strong women, and so I had a lot of early exposure to art in my youth and throughout my upbringing. So I I don't like to be very literal. I'm very impressionistic with my brush strokes, very bold, very organic. And I tend to try to tell a story through symbolism. So maybe if you're looking at it, you might see something like a beautiful rat, but if you really deconstruct what is in front of you, it's a lifetime of stories that I've compiled into one composite.
Which is just terrific. We are talking with Nancy XiaoRong Valentine. If you want to chat with her, give us a call or a text, 651-989-9226. Now, you also have a new exhibit coming out, The Audacity to be Asian in Rural America. And I know that you're going to be traveling with that. Where can people meet you and see the exhibit?
Absolutely. Well, I just want to thank Springboard and the Blanding Foundation for really supporting that project in the first place. It's a whole body of work that focuses on the 12 animals of the Chinese zodiac. And throughout that, I tell stories about my entire family, my mother's, my grandparents' immigration story to Otter Tail County. And what we're going to be doing next is going to be joining the St. Cloud community at the Whitney Gallery over the dates of July 1st through July 17th. And that's going to be alongside the exhibition What I Fought For, which is a beautiful photography exhibition of Tanika Roy it's just profound. It's about the relationship between veterans and refugees. So it's such an honor to be able to travel with this body of work to share it with other rural communities.
So wonderful. Well, I know that you inspire other people. What do you hope your art can bring to the conversation, Nancy?
Oh gosh, I really have started to lean into my understanding of the ways in which my art can be, can act as an agent of impact and change, or a voice or a platform for others. And so I'm hoping that when people come and view this body of work, that they see that there are Asian folks in rural spaces, whether or not you see them very prevalent, they are there. They don't owe you an apology for being there. They're allowed to exist in their fullness of humanity and with dignity. And so I want to use this exhibition as a form of representation to remind people that we are here, but also to use it as a conversation starter to say, differences make a difference and they are to be celebrated. And so this is a way that we can start to embrace that by inviting people to hear some of these vulnerable stories and to really engage with people who have different backgrounds than they do.
Nancy, I'm glad you mentioned this and are doing this specifically focusing on being Asian in rural America, and also just bringing more attention to being Asian and Asian American, because there is a narrative going on in the United States right now. And unfortunately, the focus really started because of violence against Asians. How do you want people to look at Asians, Asian Americans, and just some of the issues that you deal with and people in your culture deal with?
Absolutely, yeah. This body of work was originally a part of Springboard's project called Artist Responds, Equitable Rural Futures, and that's really what this is about for me. I mean, I have witnessed firsthand, as well as out in various communities, a lot of just tense dynamics. And I want to encourage people to, when they see someone of Asian descent, to look at them with the eyes that they would look at any other human, someone who in front of them probably has a rich, complex history, that they probably have stories behind them that you could never imagine, and to approach that with a respectful dignity, to understand that the person in front of you has a wholeness to them, not just what you're catching a tiny glimpse of when you pass by them. And so I want people to approach each other with kindness and with an openness and a willingness to engage, not a fear or an anxiety or they're different than me, so they're othered. I want them to understand that diversity is what makes our community so great.
Very well said, Nancy. And I know that your career in art will just blossom and grow, and I hope you go national and international, but I also hope you think about maybe running for office one day. You're very inspirational. I love listening to you.
Gosh, well, thank you. That is a very high compliment. I will say I do believe that arts and arts activism, the things that you care about, the things that motivate you, are all tied together. And so I'll definitely take that into consideration. No promises, but I will say there will never be a day that you won't see me involved in my community, because I do believe it's lots of those small, incremental, consistent changes that make great change that is going to make a lasting impact on our region.